you're getting on. Sat by the fireside, pondering on. Picture book, pictures of your mama, taken by your papa a long time ago. Picture book of people with each other to prove they love each other a long time ago. Picture book, picture book.
Well, it's a new week here at Gulfstream Park. We're happy to be back at it, and look at that live shot of what's doing outside from that camera high above the finish line here at Gulfstream Park. Blue sky for as far as the eye can see, and we're ready to roll fast and firm with a light breeze coming in off the Atlantic Ocean. So good to have you with us, everybody. We go to our double cam, if you will. Acacia Courtney downstairs, Paddock set, Jason Blewett upstairs from our clubhouse studios. And the point is, we're glad you're here. It's all hands on deck. And what's going on with you, Acacia?
Well, as you said, Jason, it's a gorgeous day today. It really is, and feeling very lucky to be a part of the Gulfstream Park family, as you said. And a big shout out to everybody here at Gulfstream that puts obviously the care and well-being of our staff and our horses number one. So, and a big thank you to all of you back at home too, who have continued to watch and wager on Gulfstream. You make our job even more fun, and hopefully we make your job a little bit, or your days a little bit interesting as well.
Definitely, and some people certainly stuff their pockets with about $20,000 here, $20,000 in the Rainbow Six when we were last in action on Sunday with the mandatory payout. Want to thank everybody for playing. We begin anew on today's card. Now, the weather, as you could see, just picture perfect outside. $100,000 will be the guarantee, and that'll start in the fifth race. And we may have close to a free ride single, if you will, Acacia. Looking at the Rainbow Six, that second leg, race number 6, has got a horse by the name of Untitled, who's going to be a massive favorite.
Yeah, absolutely is. And there were some scratches in that race. It seemed like between him and Roman Empire that it was kind of a little bit of a two-horse race anyway. And now it really is after some of those scratches. So Untitled will be a monster favorite. But coming back to the scene of where he broke his maiden in a super impressive performance. And Jason, I thought you might have a free bingo square, if you will, in the first leg of the early pick 5. But there are some really competitive races all throughout the program today.
Definitely, and that free potential bingo square you are alluding to with your early pick 5 is maybe no surprise looking at the early betting. It's the number 10 Laska, who's just taking at this stage of the game, I think, a smart plummet, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, down to essentially the bottom this afternoon for trainer Michael Matz. And I guess it boils down to, if she runs close to her best race, she's probably not going to get beat this afternoon.
I would think so. I mean, that's how it's supposed to play out. So wanting to use some coverage in some of the other races, I ended up just pulling the plug here with a horse that's even money early in the wagering. I'm 2 deep in race number 2 with a second-time starter in the Sweetie. She Knows the Drill, who I think will be pretty tough today. I'm 3 deep in the third race, which I think is a little bit tricky. I wasn't entirely positive with what we were going to get in there. You also, I feel like you have that kind of feeling in the fourth race as well. You've got some horses that are in good form. Some of them stretching out, some of them stepping up. It's going to be a little bit of, I think, an interesting race of who comes with their best effort. And then I'm 3 deep in the fifth to wrap things up in what is actually a really nice race. You've got Lobo and Willing to Speed squaring off in here today, which I think makes that race very interesting. A little bit of Tricky Magician as well. But
Yep.
I think that's a competitive race, which also kicks off the Rainbow Six.
Definitely. At that point of the day and looking at the first 5 races, that is hands down the classiest group that has the most quality. And I'm with you 100% regarding Lobo against the Kimmel horse, who's one of 3 dropping out of a rematch race that we are going to talk about. But for Acacia's play, a $36 ticket, and clearly you're going to try to leverage a big favorite here in the form of the number 10 Laska, who is in for the 12-5 this afternoon. Let's backtrack to her last start here. She's going to take money off her entire resume to date, but she had legitimate trouble. I don't know if it was trouble that stopped her in her tracks per se. I don't know if she was going to win this race. I'm under the impression maybe she didn't bring her A game, but the point is it was at a much higher level, and she'll get blind switched as she starts to get her feet beneath her. It took a while to really start to get her feet moving beneath Joe Bravo. And once she started to crank up with a run, she got blind switched there by the number 10 horse. And any run, I think that she was basically on the verge of putting forth, at least trying to make a dent in that margin she was trying to make up. It just evaporated like that. And we often see it's tough for horses running at or near this level. You have trouble, it might just be another day for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, too. To see a horse have her momentum shut off like that, it's very rare to see them come back with any sort of legitimate rally. So I do think that you can forgive her. I agree. I don't think it was going to be a winning performance, but we certainly would have seen, I think, a little bit stronger finish than it does appear. And she does have that good race for 35,000 back at the beginning of September or December, excuse me. So I think the drop is going to be key, and it just looks warranted after her last couple of races. Let's put her where she can win. And I kind of like you thought after that it was pretty wide open. I took a stab in second with the number 11 Pasa Time, who's also taking a drop in class, only one turf race to date. But I thought that this filly by Tonalist, who interestingly enough has had some pretty nice turf runners, I thought that this one could potentially switch to the grass successfully again and at a lower level.
Yeah, good trainer for sure, and maybe an interesting price when it's all said and done at about 105 Eastern. As we move forward, we hit that fast main track on a bright and sunny day here in Hallandale Beach and move on to the opening leg of the early pick four, a 3-up filly and mare $16,000 maiden claimer that sees you and I just taking that mid-pack outside 6-7-7-6 exacta box. And I gave the edge in a race I don't think we're going to spend a whole lot of time talking about. I gave the vote quite simply Acacia to a second-time starter who's obviously only had the one race in the 6 Cabrina, who at nearly 99-1 ran a fine race in context to this field first time out.
She did, and the third place finisher, Mystic Coming Home, came back to win with a 54 buyer speed figure. She didn't get off that well, so I think we're going to see a stronger race from her today. I did give a slight nod to She Knows the Drill. I know that she was beaten at this level, but the last race produced 2 next out winners, and she has speed, Jason, so that was kind of what pushed her over the edge for me for Kathleen O'Connell.
Stylistically, absolutely, she is one to fear in that second race for KO. Moving on to the third, back on the turf, everybody, as we continue on with this 3-up filly and mare 12-5 to 10-5 claiming race that just, although this field has got size to it, and in fact the starting stalls are essentially maxed out with a cast of 12, there's just not much turf form to go on, right? I mean, this is a really difficult race. If memory serves, you're 3 or 4 deep in your early pick 5 here.
Yeah, I felt like this was the race. In fact, in race number 3 here, I'm 3 deep, wanting a little bit of coverage because both you and I landed on the same 3 horses or same 4 horses in our super box. But I don't know about you, but I was just looking through, and finally I kind of threw my hands up and I said, well, I've got a horse taking a drop in class with a Misael Jaramillo up. So that was kind of the thing that pushed Make a Mint over the edge for me. She hasn't raced since December, but that last race was decent against tougher competition. So I thought that she could be live. Maybe Echizada turning back in distance. We just don't really know what we're going to get from her. This is a kind of race where I felt like these are not the most consistent horses. You're going to want a little bit of coverage.
Definitely the rail horse Dash, who's inside for Peter Pugh and Marcos Meneses. That horse's turf debut wasn't all that bad. Again, very much keeping in line with what she's going to face this afternoon. Someone's going to bust through. You and I are both taking the 6, Make a Mint for trainer William Hickey. Let's move on to the 4th as we continue on, and we're back on the main track coming up on this 3-up filly and mare, $6,250 claimer for horses that have never won 2 races. And I didn't see the morning line, but I felt as though, and we both, if my feeling is correct, I think this race, and we both picked against a horse I think will be favored in the number 6 Painter Fest. And that's my point. I feel as though when I looked at this race, everybody kind of pivoted off of the presence of Painter Fest, who I just ultimately don't trust here, being laid up about 8 weeks, dropping in class off the claim for Victor Barboza Jr. in for the 62.50.
Yeah, and she is actually the morning line favorite. You're right, which I didn't realize either. And I know obviously this barn has fantastic numbers off the claim, so she might take some attention just based off of that in a race that is, I think, kind of wide open. But I think that actually leaves the door open, and clearly you felt the same, for maybe you're going to find some value. Maybe you've got a little bit of a horse that's maybe an up-and-comer. just didn't trust Painterfest. Only when came on a wet track, taken off the turf, going a mile and a 16th at Monmouth. So last couple of races, not a ton of form to really sink your teeth into. That said, there's not a ton of form to sink your teeth into with my top pick, but I found a stat on trainer Juan Avila, and you mentioned this is a good barn. He certainly had, I think, a breakout year with King Guillermo in the Tampa Bay Derby, and he was very well known when we were getting ready for our Clásico del Caribe
Sure.
races as well.
Trophy
But
chaser, too,
trophy
right?
chaser. He's had some big horses the last couple of years. So anyway, here for Juan Avila over the past 5 years on the dirt, going a distance of ground for the first time. 3 for 11 winning, but 9 for 11 in the money, and it's a big ROI. You've got Edgar Zayas, Jason, on a horse that I feel like stretching out is going to show some more speed. Had a very good race last time out. I like the rider change today, and if she can handle the distance and show speed with a stat like that to back it up, I thought maybe I'll get a little price too.
No, some good points, and either perhaps she's on the lead or tracking the one Samoa, goes from the rail with the Misael. So nothing wrong taking a forwardly placed horse for sure who is not going to be favored in this race. And it's funny, you brought up the distance and perhaps that being a little bit of a question mark, or at least maybe a question mark with the 3 Stormy Boss, but it's very much, I think, all these horses, they're clearly in the same boat, and this is going to be a demanding 1-mile trip for all of these horses, and that was my feeling in the end when I put the 4-time, the 2-step on top. Just for her, I know she didn't beat much last time out, and she essentially paid $240, in fact, as a massive favorite here in her maiden win on March 21st. I put a premium on just quite simply her having a recent victory going this 1-turn mile.
Yeah, and I think that's key. And it wasn't, the smoothest victory for her either last time. And yes, she was the favorite taking that drop in class, but she certainly has that on her resume that others won't be able to show as of yet.
Well, we do have Ronnie on our resume here. Want everybody to sit tight. We've got the Nicoletti Rainbow 6 and a whole lot more coming up after this.
And they're off. Second in the 2-path. Round off first inside. Race. A quarter of a mile to go, and he's 6 on top. Last of the 12 as they roll into the backstretch.
Pete Aiello with the soundbite on that first bet commercial as we gaze out one of our favorite views here in all of South Florida. Things have certainly settled down following a busy Thursday morning here during trading hours, and we're up in class for sure. Not only bringing Ronnie on for his Rainbow 6 ticket as Jason and Acacia welcome you all back to this live Thursday edition of Gulfstream Park today, but there's some class and quality to go around in this Rainbow 6 sequence, isn't there, Acacia?
Yeah, there is. I like this sequence a lot. I think particularly the 9th race today, looking forward to that one. That is a really deep and tough allowance turf race coming up a little bit later on, but just all throughout, I think you see the presence of Mike Maker in a few spots today where he looks pretty tough. I know both you and I looking forward to Dr. Edgar for Barclay Tag this afternoon as well.
Yeah, a little BT action there, who for me may potentially, you've got Untitled as probably the shortest price favorite in this Rainbow 6, but Dr. Edgar in his own right is going to be very short and I think very tough, and I'm curious to see what Ronnie's got cooking in his Rainbow 6. Now, he did not single Untitled in the 6th race. He opted to obviously use 2 in that spot, also including the Todd Pletcher turf to dirt move of Roman Empire. And he didn't single Dr. Edgar. He's 3 deep there. And good coverage, in fact, Acacia, this ticket for $43.20.
Yeah, I like it. And as we bring up, I actually took a similar kind of take as Ronnie did. I didn't single Entitled either. And I think he's very talented, but I don't entirely trust him. We'll put it that way. And in this spot, it very well could be a a kind of a walkover almost for him. I'm 3 deep in the first leg, but Roman Empire was just so good on the dirt. I know it was against state-bred competition, but just so good on the dirt, and I've always liked him more on the dirt, so I'm gonna give him a little bit of appreciation because of that. But I'm happy to see Untitled back. He's faced really good company, obviously, in his last couple, and I'm using Dr. Edgar as well. But I also included Morocco, who got the win last time after coming out of the McDermott. He's one of those Mike Maker horses I mentioned, who also is going to have the very well bet Temple in race 9.
Definitely Temple, one of at least a couple of major players in that race, along with the number 3 horse. That's Opry, right? Going out for Todd?
Yep, that's the one.
Absolutely. 579 to wrap things up in a very difficult race. If you feel as though, like I do, maybe Untitled and Dr. Edgar are going to win as pretty clear favorites, at least you got some potential wiggle room concerning some good priced horses in the nightcap, and maybe even more than just the 10th race as we move forward. And we had touched upon I think really the biggest pre-race bullet occasion in this 5th race earlier when we were talking about your early pick 5, and it's that 3-horse rematch out of the Willing to Speed race here on March 8th where you had that blanket photo. It's those 3 essentially, and Willing to Speed looks the best of that group against the Irish bred for Brendan Walsh and the 7 who I like in this spot in Valdo Lobo.
Yeah, this is, I think, a nice little matchup in here. I think Valdo Lobo certainly elevated his stock with the fact that he wired the field 2 starts back, and then at Gulfstream last time when he finally got into a race after it kept getting rained off the turf. So that's the explanation for the 3-month gap there. He showed that he didn't need to be on the lead last time, which I think is going to be really beneficial for him given the fact that there is some other speed in here. However, he is coming off another 3-month freshening. We know that's no problem for him. But I have been trying to get Willing to Speed home. So I'm hoping he sets a good trip in here today. And he ran a good race last time.
Yeah, trying to figure out the pace. The 5 carbon data almost seems like a guaranteed speed horse. Well, as guaranteed you could be with a horse who has not run since the first week of August in 2018. I mean, he is coming off a massive layoff this afternoon for Mary Epler, who's 3 for her last 12 with 12 months or more on the sidelines. Now, again, to put that layoff in context, I mean, this horse last ran, about 2 months after Justify won the Triple Crown? I mean, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, it really is. And this was a horse that she had it was a Virginia bred, so she was able to take advantage of those Virginia bred stakes that they offer at Laurel Park. So I could imagine how this would be an exciting claim for a barn like Mary's, and certainly has been training down here in South Florida as he is a turf horse. So bringing him back, I'm curious what we're going to get from him. I used him a little bit further down as you did too, but he's got some ability if he's able to come back and run. And I do always think it's a bit interesting to see a Virginia bred that started out with Chad Brown.
Yeah, that is kind of neat. And this horse, if memory serves, I think Paul Pompa originally had this horse and cost a decent amount, maybe around 350,000. But in good hands, Mary Epler obviously needs no introduction, much like our favorite in the opening leg, an odds-on favorite in a cast of 4 to start the late pick 5 in Untitled, who I'm going to, for better or for worse, I know Ronnie and you both included Roman Empire on your respective Rainbow Six plays, but I'm going to take just the speedy Untitled as he only has to run against 3, and I just view him as a horse who's probably just going to break on top, go to the lead, and not be challenged this afternoon, as we will get over the next, I'd say, span of maybe 72 hours. We're going to have horses dropping out of the Gotham like Untitled is left and right, because there's a couple in Saturday's featured Unbridled Stakes, including Attachment Rate, who are both coming out of that March 7th race in the Big Apple. Coverage the remainder of the sequence, a $27 play, where I also considered singling Dr. Edgar, but again, I think of the two, Untitled is the more likely winner, of course, and again, not to harp on it, but he's only got to take down 3 foes this afternoon, as he ran a fine race, actually. In fact, with things being so crazy in New York, like many places, not having been able to run, I almost forgot how well this horse ran in the Gotham, and that was a real eureka moment. I know he ran second, of course, but the trip that he had pulled was like a no-breather type trip where he wound up in a good spot down the backstretch, but as he started to engage on the turn, got jammed up between three horses, including the eventual winner, Mischievous Alex, who's in the red and green down inside. This was a Gulfstream-centric trifecta, as attachment rate is down in the red cap on the rail with that yellow saddle towel. He'll suck up for a piece, but I give Untitled, who was running, as you know, Acacia, against a legitimately talented horse for John Service. I love that he never backed down. I mean, he was really stubborn in defeat here.
Yeah, faced Mischievous Alex a couple times, in fact. He won the Swale, but I also thought the pretty game performance here and attachment rate was really late in switching leads at the end, too. But I did think Untitled was game to hold him off closing as well. So that was another kind of plus side for him there. He ran second behind the very highly touted Gouverneur Morris, 2 starts back at Tampa, in what was not the easiest race for either of them, as race dynamics changed when the other Todd Pletcher runner stumbled at the start, and Gouverneur Morris ended up kind of taking it to Untitled early. So I think he's actually had races that look maybe not so good on paper. They look okay, but watching them, I think they're actually very strong races that he is coming out of. So happy to see him back again. I remember, I'm sure as you do too, just how all of our jaws were on the floor with his debut race when he won by 11 lengths. And it is cool to see how he has stamped himself as a legitimate contender against much tougher competition.
Definitely, and he's the dominant speed here. We'll see how Roman Empire does. His dirt race 2-back was very good. Love seeing a Florida bred by Empire Maker, but he's got his work cut out for him against a very potentially graded quality foe in Untitled this afternoon. And that's, I think, a good segue into our 7th race as we bounce back onto the turf and talk about this $50,000 starter allowance, because you've got Dr. Edgar, who's basically, for the most part, been on a graded stakes diet, and if they weren't graded, he was running in $100,000 stakes up north for Barclay Tag and just keeping very good company. And you would think after running 5th here on the Florida Derby undercard in late March, he bounced out of that race in good shape. In fact, here's his breeze from just a few days ago, working in company with the recent Barclay Tag Stakes winner, the 3-year-old filly Highland Glory, who we think a lot of. And I liked what I saw. Maintenance move, and they went an easy half mile, but you can watch the exercise rider on the outside aboard Dr. Edgar with that steady camera, the camera slowly starting to settle down. I mean, clearly Dr. Edgar is doing quite well going into this race.
Yeah, he's a powerful horse. He's obviously got a little bit of size, just obviously given his age and being a male versus his company there. But I think Highland Glory is very talented, and she's a lot more nimble than he certainly would be. But it's interesting, as he is the type of horse that can be forwardly placed. Now, he's run well at a variety of distances. I, for a while, was kind of wondering maybe where his best spot was, but I have no qualms with him going a mile. He does have an outside post, but there were a couple of main track onlys inside of him, so it's not really going to be like going from post 11. I do also think that the performance we saw from Social Paranoia off the layoff and Sambaye coming off of a graded stakes win, that was a very, very tough and wide open Appleton that he does come out of. I also gave a little love to Morocco, who faced graded stakes company 2 starts back, including his stablemate Zulu Alpha. I just kind of felt like this is a typical Mike Maker move. Put him back in a spot where he can win. He didn't end up getting claimed. Now he's protected again. Get that confidence up, get him to the winner's circle, then move forward with him.
Definitely. Although, unfortunately for everybody, it looked like Barclay Tag had this race in mind.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, I know if I was entering a horse in this $50K starter allowance, I'm not expecting to run against a legit stakes, graded stakes quality turf horse like Dr. Edgar, who, believe it or not, ran in maiden claiming races back in 2016, ran as low as maiden 25.
Yeah.
So he is qualified, and that is something not lost on his connections. Quite the shrewd placement as a massive favorite in the 7th race. Moving back to the main track, let's move on to the 8th as we check out these 3-year-old fillies. in this starter optional claimer. There's a couple of well-connected JBMs. The two last out maiden winners in the 4, Topo Grigio for Todd, and Safi's got the 5 Bird Map off the claim for Frank Calabrese. I like the effort and the overall race, just as far as quality goes, that the number 2, Money Never Sleeps, is coming out of. She had a good trip and prompted, but again, I feel as though, good trip aside, her effort here just a couple of weeks ago on the 10th of April was against a very solid field, and I like the way she's running her 2 races off the claim for Terry Pompey.
And Terry's been really sharp with her claims this year. I mean, you think of a horse like Mrs. Maisel, who she claimed from Wesley Ward and had a lot of success with. And so she's done really well with her horses that she's claimed. I think that Topo Grigio is certainly a player, given the win last time out. And I know that Kimura's stepping up. However, she's the only 2-time winner in the field. She added the blinkers last time, showed a lot of speed. And if you look back at her past performances, she ran a really good third back in mid-January and was facing stakes competition prior to that. So I think that she's kind of one of those horses that maybe has found her groove a little bit more. I like that she has 2 wins already to her name, and clearly the blinkers were a good experiment that seemed to work last time.
She's well posted, without a doubt. Good connections and a good running style. Absolutely. She's potentially dangerous as she steps up. Pretty salty spot for her, but again, on paper, there are some things I like about the 7 Kimura for Jorge Delgado. Moving on to our featured 9th race, we've got a lot here, a couple of replays that we'll dive into, and that'll basically, I think, take care of like the 3 major tiers. The first of which is a very crowded rematch off a race here. Speaking of the Florida Derby undercard in the Appleton, which Dr. Edgar, 2 races back, is coming out of, you've got a very solid and salty allowance race from March 28th, in which Temple and the Green Moster and 3 others are coming out of. I felt as though in the end, though, the Green Moster tried to follow Temple in this race, but Temple's the one that's going to be the shortest price by a good ways. And how can you argue with this horse, just how consistently sharp he's been, especially here in South Florida for trainer Mike Maker?
Yeah, he's been really great. And of course, this was won by a 4-5 shot in Largent, who was the horse to beat in this spot. But closing far on the outside, the number 5 in the yellow cap, huge late run from Temple. And, I mean, this was just one of those oversubscribed full turf races on the Florida Derby undercard, and what a fun race it was to see. 3rd in the Old Man Eloquent prior to that, 3rd behind Halliday in the Tropical Park Derby. I mean, this horse has been right there, been really consistent, and he's got another Todd Pletcher horse in here in Opry, who will likely be part of the pace and maybe set up to give him another chance to close in here, Jason.
And the thing with Opry is, or I think the real issue and potentially a positive one is, could he be this level stepping up? You get a horse that's obviously got some talent, who perhaps Todd feels is just in a good spot as he beat a stablemate of his last time out in Bourbon in May. Here's the race. You could see it for yourself, and this was an effort, although a length to the good on the finish line. I don't think the W here with Opry was ever in doubt. I had liked Bourbon in May in the showdown between the 2 Pletcher horses, and I knew my horse wasn't going to catch Opry, who just dug in and did everything right as a front runner. I guess my question with him is, you know he's probably going to improve, but will he improve enough to run against the likes of Temple, who's easily kept the better company?
Yeah, he certainly has, and he's second off the layoff, which could be a little bit of an intrigue as well. And I thought that his speed was nice last time out, and clearly this was a horse having broken his maiden, in fact, in the With Anticipation. He's faced some really tough company. He ran in the Breeders' Cup. He was a horse they thought very highly of, and it's good to see him back, and I thought that the way he finished up, it looked like he really needed that race. And so the fact that he needed that race and still was able to hold off good competition, I think he's going to move forward off of that. Like I said, though, there should be some other speed. You've got award winner who's talented and well-bred and has a lot of speed, and I don't think we're going to see him off the pace like we did last time out, but I respect the work that he's done. And even Arthur Kitt, and I know you have some nuggets to share on this one, but he's the horse that we've seen in Europe run forwardly placed, and probably, given the fact he is off the layoff but training sharply, I would imagine they're going to try to break well and maybe have him be forward as well.
It does sound, and that might absolutely all be valid. It sounded to me, and we'll bring up our Thursday quote book. I was chatting with Christophe Comant, who's nominated to Racing's Hall of Fame yesterday, and he was telling me about this horse and said he's trained fair. The video we're watching is one of his last wins. In fact, I think the last time this horse won a race back at Royal Ascot in 2018. And he said he's trained fair, looks like he's found a tough race, and I have a lot of respect for Temple and Opry. The rest of this quote that Christoph gave me about the mile and a quarter to a mile and 3/8 at Belmont, and the fact that they are going to, the plan anyways, to take him up to New York afterwards, this struck me as a potential prep for a horse who they're just anxious, who's doing well, but a horse that they're anxious to get back and just finally get a race under his belt this afternoon.
Well, you look at the last time that he shipped to North America in the Nijinsky at Woodbine, went a mile and a half. He was going a mile and a quarter prior to that. He's just been running longer distance races, and it does seem like this is going to be a good stepping stone type of race for him to go a bit longer. I think he's talented, and it is kind of cool to see a horse that we saw run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf back in 2018. In fact, behind Line of Duty, which is also the same race that Opry ran in, and now they're going to rematch again.
It
So
is
it's kind of a
funny
fun
how
nugget
that,
there.
you know,
Yeah.
when you start to think about what are the odds, especially with a horse who's been a Euro throughout a good chunk of his career, what are the odds they're going to show up in a Thursday allowance race in late April at Gulfstream Park? Yeah, I like when stuff like that happens for sure. Solid race on the turf in the 9th. And we're on the turf for race number 10. This will be a 12-horse 10th race finale, 3-and-up fillies and mares in this $12,500 claimer. I was really hoping the 13 Oblio's Wish would draw in off the also eligible list, and I got my wish with Oblio's Wish, who got the good race and seemed to really take a step forward first time off that trainer change to Carlos David. And I get you're talking about a turf race where, you know, the Lady Panda Yolanda's Pride race, tight finish. She didn't do all that much running after she was passed, and maybe the fact she was beaten only 3 lengths at a much higher level can be a little deceptive in a tightly bunched turf finish, but I just look at her 2 races for Carlos and think, you know, he's got her at a good groove right now, and I just like that recent improvement.
And that last race was against Topfer too, and I was a bit harsh. I should have included her having drawn in, and I believe she was your pick 2 starts back when she got that win at 8-1, which was a good one, and she showed a lot more speed. I have a price I like in here too. The number 9, Spicy Nelly, I think is better when she can show some speed, and she's going to be a big price in here. But I don't know about you, Jason. I had a nightmare time with this race. I thought it was a very, very tough race, like some of the early ones we were joking about. If she runs like she did in her race, 2 starts back behind Avenida Mañana, where she was beaten just 3/4 of a length, she showed a lot of speed. I think Lionel Reyes is going to suit her well in here. She wasn't off well last time. She was closing wide. That was kind of a blanket finish race as well. I'm hoping that we're going to see her be more forward today and be a nice price.
All right, sounds good. Good luck to Spicy Nelly in the nightcap this afternoon. As we take a little time out, you'll have Acacia and I with all of you throughout the afternoon. We've also got Pete Aiello calling the action, and he's coming up next with those scratches and changes.